well within each community across the lines, not to tell you what you have to do. And I will use my bully pulpit to inform you when the legislature is starting to consider bills that are repugnant to the Constitution, that are repugnant to your rights and privileges that are supposed to be protected by our Constitution and by our government, not dictated and told you how you should be doing. The very first thing any legislator should be asking when he proposes any bill is this constitutionally allowed? Second of all, we need legislators that know their Constitution. And so while we have a bill, or an RSA actually, on our books that requires that all students are supposed to learn their constitutions, learn their civics, their history, and be tested on it, then reported to the Department of Education, none of that is being done. But one of the other things I think we need to do is require that every person who takes an oath to uphold the Constitution shows in some way that they are educated in that and that they understand that.
Karen, did I ask you a question first? Did you start the round first? So on the point that you made earlier, which was, I'm sorry. No, let me ask you a question. Voter integrity. What are your thoughts on voter integrity? So I'm going to get to 3 questions, and I'll go down the line. Right now, the state constitution does not authorize the use of a voting machine. What do you think?
So, it's very clear in our Constitution, Part 2, or Part 2, Article 32, that votes are supposed to be counted the day that they are cast, which is why the Secretary of State, Bill Gardner, kept saying to me, you cannot sequester these votes. Machines, if that's so, the machines are not provided for because that bill, or that article of the Constitution was written in 1783 or approved in 1783. It has not been amended. Therefore, the method of counting votes has not been amended in our state constitution. Therefore, you cannot use the voting machines just because the legislature passed a bill that for temporary use. It's a violation of the Constitution, therefore they should not be being used at all.
So I don't know how many of you know this, but the beginning of my campaign actually started with the Wyndham voting machine audits. I was there at the beginning with the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Project before it split into 2 separate organizations. It's the reason why I'm the only candidate in the entire state that's been endorsed by the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Project. What I did behind the scenes with them is I linked up Marilyn Todd and that organization with their entire network of lawyers working on audits nationwide, dealing with the machines. All the data from the New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group came from me. The reason why is because I saw the data. I saw it in Wisconsin, I saw it down in Georgia, I saw it in Arizona, I knew the lawyers on the ground, I knew the people who were working in these states, and what I do, again, long-term political strategy meant to move the ball forward and flip deep blue districts and purple districts to red for generations. I saw what the left was doing, the same thing the same long-term strategy that we lack here on the right was what they were executing against us. And they used the entire infrastructure of government to ignore laws outright, like right here in New Hampshire, as Karen has just said. It's not constitutional that the voting machines be used here. We should be using a hand count. Now, to get rid of them, that's going to have to be done at a town level. But when it comes to the fight at the state level with the state's attorneys and all of that, and contracts with the organizations involved, well, that comes to the governor. And I'll be getting rid of them if I'm given the opportunity. I'm not going to say that I'm going to win and be boisterous, because the reality is we're climbing uphill. But I believe if everybody in this room rallies behind any of the candidates sitting up here, we will win. As long as we go out and tell 30 or more people.
Thank you. The question is, currently, Part 2, Article 32, only allows for hand counting paper ballots. It's unconstitutional. If you were governor, what would you do about it?
I reflect on a few things with this. First of all, I'm sure you're all aware that France hand counts their ballots. They got about 30 million people. We have 1.4 million people. The capability to do it is there. So since like 1974, whatever the time 79, thank you, that we introduced ballot machines into the state, this has set a precedent in our towns with our town clerks, and they have been trained to use ballot machines. And it's only been in the past several years that the issues have come up. We saw what happened in Wyndham. We saw the people's lack of trust. 58% of Republicans and even 30% of Democrats don't trust our voting process. I'm a numbers guy when it comes to these types of issues. We have a lot of disparity in the numbers, and it looks like from everything that we've seen for a fair and impartial election, that hand count is more accurate than a ballot machine. So when I look at those types of numbers, I want to work behind the scenes with the legislature to understand deeper into this, okay? I want to see the possibilities of what we can do to immediately switch gears and move towards a hand count. I'm very much for a hand count. Now, the constitutionality has been debated by Dan so very well in court. Do you have a decision on it yet? I didn't know if it was quite...
No, the voting one is yet to be filed.
Okay, and that right there, first of all, will probably end up giving us the guidance that we need from the courts. Remember, the courts, however, are hijacked so many times by political ideologues, and I wouldn't stand for that as governor at all. So we're going to do things that you see across the country, like DeSantis recently suspending a prosecutor. We're going to do the job, bring the evidence forward. We have to have an open and transparent government. So I'm not going to lie to you at all. In 2024, is there potential, if I was governor, that there would be ballot machines? There is some potential there. But in the way that we do it right now, in all honesty, I don't see how that can happen. We have too many problems with ballot machines. We have parts issues. We have issues with them in general. And so what we really need to do is deep dive. I'm an outsider. I don't have all the information on this. I promise you, we will be open and transparent about it from day one, and we're going to have those town halls to get feedback from you all and to follow the New Hampshire Constitution and do good with it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I used to be an electronic technician. I had to fix a lot of machines. Machines break down a lot. That's why they hired us people to do that. And I'm also a man of my word. And if I took an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire, and it states we have to hand count them, guess what we're going to do? We're going to hand count them.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Jay, with the next round of questions. The absentee voting issue. I'm going to cheat and give you a little bit of the answer and follow up with that. Absentee voting does not enter New Hampshire politics until 1942. So from 1783 to 1942, there was no absentee voting at all. How did that come to be? What did they do? What did they do to introduce absentee balloting?
The only thing I can think of is our brave young men that went off to war in 42 and could not come here to vote, that they had the right to vote because they were protecting our country. So they should have had the right to do it while they were overseas. So I'm assuming that's how it got into it.
I'm going to stop you. The question is, how did the change to authorize absentee balloting, how did that come to be? what authority did anyone have to introduce absentee balloting?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't know.
No problem. Thank you for the honest answer. Karen?
They amended the Constitution and
Bingo.
said that there were two opportunities to request an absentee ballot. Either you were absent from your voting area, which would cover the military people who were off voting, fighting for our rights, but also if you were sick and could not make it.
Thank you. Julie?
Oh, Karen nailed it. I'm not gonna lie and say that there's a different answer. What you're gonna hear a
I'm
lot.
trying to get you to take the bait.
What you're going to hear a lot of tonight is violence agreement. All right, we all stand pretty much identical on the issues. Everywhere that I've been, Karen has been, and since Thad entered the race, everywhere that I've been, he's been too. You're not gonna see much disagreement on any of the issues here. It's just what flavor of ice cream do you want if they're fighting for you and throw a bunch of people.
So I'd like to add something to this. If that's okay.
Please do this.
So, again, for generations, let's do math real quick, about 80 years since absentee ballot started. This has been a success for our people who served overseas, for our valiant men and women who've served overseas. This has been a success for communities. Over the past years, people have tried to cheat elections through mail-in ballots. And we saw that more and more. In fact, the names on what they would call absentee ballots and mail-in ballots were very suspicious in as far as the transformation. If anybody here is real comfortable with mail-in ballots, let's talk afterwards, right? Right? It's probably going to be like nobody talking to me about this. We're all extremely uncomfortable. But this was, I think, what Dan had referred to earlier. It steps down that we go with the New Hampshire Constitution, where we take one step, and then we take another, and then we take another, and what happens? And all of a sudden, we wonder why government has so much power over the people, and why we can't figure out why. And by the way, I would have said the same thing that Jay said about the military and understanding that the Constitution must have been amended and that. So, as an outsider, I'm not going to say I have all the answers, but here's what's really important. Absentee ballots are vitally important to our lives today here in New Hampshire. But accuracy, retraining, working with the clerks, accountability, and that favorite phrase of mine, open and transparent government. We open every filing cabinet, okay? We dig in deep with some of the smartest people on the planet who will want to solve the issues that we have with distrust with elections. So let's not forget how important it is to put processes in place with absentee ballots where we go to the polls and we know that our vote and our neighbor votes and all the inhabitants of New Hampshire, their votes count.
Thank you. On the same subject of absentee voting, the follow-up to that is 1956 was an amendment to include absentee voting for primaries. Fast forward to 2020. According to Secretary of State Bill Gardner, our absentee provisions, which Karen alluded to, are two reasons. There are only two reasons a constitutional authority for an absentee ballot. One, you're already registered to vote. You're already a qualified voter. You're already registered to town. You know you'll be out of town. Two, you're physically disabled and can't attend for that reason. Now, if the Constitution was amended to change and introduce absentee voting, as governor, what would you do in the situation Sununu found himself in? In 2020, the legislature passed House Bill 1266, and they expanded absentee voting without the consent of the voters. Okay, they got no consent from anybody. You got Barbara Griffin and Jim Gray to thank for that. Okay? They gave exemptions for your boss won't let you off of work, your babysitter won't show up for your child, your elderly parent, no one will watch them for you. The National Weather Service has given a bad weather warning. Religious exemption. Okay, all these changes have been done by statute. Well, you're wonderful, as a Republican, this makes me upset, but our GOP did what? They codified this into law. So as governor, What would you do with this abuse of power? Would you use your office to put it straight? Karen?
Actually, the governor should never have signed the bill in the first place because it was unconstitutional, and if he wanted it to go forward, they would have gone through the amendment process with the Constitution in reality. And I think it's also something that he probably favored, because then you could get all of the college students and everybody else, and maybe some people in long-term care facilities where we lost so many people during the COVID epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. You could get those people to vote, and we can coerce their vote, because some of them may be demented and not be able to, but their names are on the rolls. And oh, by the way, if you're dead, you can still get a ballot. So he should never have signed that bill in the first place, and it wouldn't go anywhere.
I gotta agree with that. If you're dead, you still can get a ballot. I got a ballot for my grandmother who's been dead for 20 years. But yes, it does need to be set right. And we shouldn't be dealing with this. This is absolutely insane. And the idea that you should have every excuse under the sun to not be a damn adult and go and register and show up to the polls like you're supposed to. I mean, most of you in here are older than me. I'm 35. If I have no excuse and I make it my every effort, and I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got 3 kids, I run a company, I'm campaigning, I'm an activist, and I got 19 congressional candidates running at the federal level all over the damn country that I write strategy and messaging for. If I can do that and I can still make it to the polls for 20 minutes to cast a ballot, so can the rest of you. And you can get a ride, and you can get an Uber or a taxi. No, we don't really have taxis in New Hampshire, but you get the point. Get a ride from a friend or your grandchild or something. Hobble, walk if you can't run, walk if you can't walk, crawl, or whatever you do, keep moving forward. Dr. King was pretty good when he said that. I think it stands for this too.
Thank you. Thank you. What would you do as governor to deal with a bad legislative act?
Let me jump back to Julian here real quick. There is a busing system, but that brings folks in from Massachusetts. The Democrats use that. So I just wanted to mention that. They have that bus. So if you're from Mass, you can't do it from New Hampshire. You have to be from Mass. And you have to be a registered Democrat. So let me be very clear about this. On day one, we're going to have the Office of Election Integrity, okay? That's going to be myself working, helping lead this, but I want the Attorney General in line, and I also spent a lot of time recently with a constitutional expert, okay? He's a brilliant man. He's known throughout New Hampshire for a couple decades. Dan, I'll tell you his name after. You might like. I don't want to be weird with Dan and say, oh, I'd like you to work with me too here, because I don't want him to do anything weird with the debate, so we'll just keep everything straight. So we're going to have a couple constitutional experts involved with the Election Integrity Office. But right now, we have an Office of Election Integrity. Did you know that? They're a communications group, and that's all they are. And they're telling you what to think. Okay? We're not going to do that. We're just going to be open and transparent. The Attorney General and I and the constitutional scholar are going to sit down, we're going to go through, and we're going to figure out what's constitutional and not constitutional with voting. Okay? And then we're just going to make it happen. We'll be really open and transparent about it. So stuff we need to get rid of, let's get rid of it. We live in an information age. I mean, in 1908, what did you do? If you had a problem voting, what did you do? Jump on a horse and go? Right? Today we got fast cars, we got communication, we got the Ubers. I mean, people can get to the polls. We don't need to dumb this down and make it something that it's not. But we live in a world filled with excuses. So what I think is incredibly vitally important is we establish the office, we have a strong Attorney General, strong constitutional scholars. We get to the bottom of this with the Office of Election Integrity, and you know what we're going to have to do then? We're going to have to communicate our problems. We're going to have to tell you what we've done wrong before in the past, not to point fingers at people, but to correct what's going on, so those 58% of Republicans and 30% of Democrats can walk into the polls and be like, yes, I know my vote counts. And that is so important what we do.
Thank you. What would you do about the problem if faced with that scenario, that you're dealing with a bad that legislative act, what would you do?
Well, I would try to change it back to how it was, because we forgot to veto it. It should have been vetoed at the beginning. And the only way you can do it is, like you said, Attorney General, and bring it back in front of the legislature and change it to the way it should be, and not the way it shouldn't have been.
I'm going to follow up for the answer. The answer is Article 41, Part 2, which says that the governor is his primary duty to make sure the laws of the state, including the Constitution, are faithfully executed. Next. Question for Julian, I think will be next. What's the first thing you would do if elected governor? What's the first thing you would do as an active governor?
As an active governor, first thing I'm gonna do once the election's over, because first thing I'm gonna do once the election's over is smoke a cigar and hang out with my kids, because I don't see them at all. But as governor, well, first, I need to sit down with all the Republicans that won, and we need to figure out a game plan. Because the governor is not the man alone. I think we've made that pretty clear. We have the weakest governor in the country, and it's for damn good reason. But one thing he is he should be a front man. We were talking backstage about, and it holds true between law enforcement and military. The rank that you have on your collar is there for you to protect the people who are under you. As governor, that means I'm protecting the citizens. One of the things a governor can do is he can, when your town is violating your rights, the governor and the state does have the ability to step in between your town and you and protect you for what your town is doing to you. So when the governor said that he couldn't step in and stop Nashua from instituting mask mandates, so I spent a lot of time at the National School Board meetings fighting the crazies that are over there trying to stop the mask mandates. Yeah, the governor could have stepped in and stopped that. Here in my own town, Derry, where Pinkerton is one of the best school districts in the country, and yet we have this, in the state, and yet we have that very same issue in my backyard. And going to a lot of those meetings, same thing. So one of the things I will be doing is stepping in, and we need an attorney general that is actually going to work for the people, not a plant who's going to continue to do snooze will once he's out of office. But stepping in between your towns to make sure your towns are not violating your rights is one of the duties that I have as a governor.
Thank you. That.
All right, so I'm going to technically answer this, because I think the first thing you ever do as governor is you get sworn in and have the big speech, and they do that whole thing. We'll call it the People's Inauguration. We'll bring everybody. We'll bring everybody out. Everybody who is part of the story here in New Hampshire. As I've traveled the state since last year, I hear a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, a lot of hopelessness. I hear about the struggles from business owners, from parents, from people across the state, from kids who are more confused now than ever, and the problems that we face. I would want to have a big, wide open door. Bring everybody we can in. Maybe it's outside somewhere in the stadium, where we can bring as many people together in one moment. And we start over. We start over. We start believing the best in our neighbor again. Remember, that's how we were raised, a lot of us. That's how I was raised. So I didn't judge people. I didn't try and tell people what to do. I want politicians forcing all these ideas and taking away our freedoms. We're going to let people know that the government will serve at their consent. We're going to let them know it's going to be so much of a better story. We're going to have a better story for preborn babies. We're going to have a lot better story for moms, too. We're going to talk about these stories in real life, and then we're going to go do something about it. On the ground. I'm a work guy. That's what I do. I love to work. I work like 18 hours a day. It's crazy. And that's what we have to do to get things going in the right direction. But the messaging has to be very, very clear right now. Because I hear it in every corner of New Hampshire. It doesn't matter if it's Bedford or Colebrook, or was I Pittsburgh the other day, talking to a business owner. It breaks my heart to hear what's going on. That's what I want to do first. The first thing is we're going to do good for people, and we're going to help them believe a little bit better in what's going on so they can get back to work, living their lives, instead of worrying about what's going on in closed-door Concord.
Well, I'm running to try to fix the DMV. But the first thing I'm going to do is, Commissioner Quinn, you got a new job to look for. Eddie Edwards, you got a job to look for. Because they don't follow our state laws that our representatives make. And when you bring it to their attention, they just say that's the way it is. No, it is not. Follow the laws of the state. Those are the first two people to go. And then after that is Mike Todd. He's in the DMV.
So the very first thing that I would be doing is, we have a lot of controversy, hurt feelings, concerns, worries, everything else that's going on in this state. And I told you at the beginning that we were a nation founded on God. So one of the things that we have eliminated from actual practice that used to happen in the state of New Hampshire is a day that is committed to prayer and thanksgiving. And that's what I will be doing very first thing.
School in, what's that, one more? All right, civics. We had a lot of conversation about civics and the conduct of our schools in the last 2 years. So what most of you don't know is that right now, civics as it's taught in school is not civics, it's social studies. So you're getting the gloss over. And here's the other thing. They've eliminated your state constitution. What they have in place now is the basic civics course that an immigrant might take. I used to be one that came from Canada, fair warning. What was the word? It was a lawful permanent resident alien. I had a green card. So I know the process very well. But the point is this. We no longer have this institution in place. So our students today are not getting adequate knowledge of our state constitution. As governor, they can start, have gone around the table here? All right, so we're going to start with you. So the question is, as governor, what would you do to strengthen civics being taught, state civics, relevant to our students graduating from high school, competent to run for public office?
Fantastic question. I have 4 kids in public schools. 3 at Exeter High School. You know about Exeter, they get sued every other week. And cooperative middle school. Okay, I can see the degrading of our education over the past decade since my 2 oldest graduated in 2016 and 17 from Exeter and went on to Liberty University. Their education was completely different than it is today, okay? When you talk history with the kids, it's like, holy cow. When you talk civics with them, you're like, wow. I have a lot of work to do as a parent to supplement what they're not learning in the school. I love tech, but I love our traditional education that we've had. Hillsdale is an incredible resource for how they're teaching civics, and I'm not saying you're not moving that curriculum, but here's the thing. On day one, the superintendents in this state are going to understand something. They're going to have to prove that they deserve to have a job and that we even need them. And you can put on that. It's incredibly important to understand that these political ideologues will be served notice on day one. And I love the idea of our school boards working directly with principals. And I love the idea of empowering parents in our schools. We will not fix our education system by being afraid and by playing politics as usual. That will not work. We are going to have to take bold moves to make this about traditional education. Again, I don't want to dumb that down and say technology is amazing. One of my kids does construction. He makes more money than me in a week, okay? We want to value the trades, we want to value tech, we want to value all these things we're capable of today. When it comes to civics, when it comes to this country, when it comes to New Hampshire, when it comes to America, our kids know so little, and the schools aren't doing the job. I'm not blaming the teachers, by the way, because they want to teach, but they're stuck dealing with these crazy meetings. They say, filling out forms all the time. It's like the nurses can barely be nurses because they got to fill out forms all the time. We want them to do their job and empower them, and we're not going to get it done on any of this with our education if we don't. Hi, Denise, I see you. I'm sorry. You were way over there. It's not my fault. So I just want to close by saying civics, this country, this state, all of this matters. And if it doesn't matter now enough, it's gonna be gone. We can change it. It's gonna take an aggressive move or two, but we can do the job. It won't be one person, it'll be all of us together.
James, what would you do to strengthen our civics in the state?
Well, I know when I went through school, I didn't learn a whole bunch. I learned more on Chronicle about our state than I did in our education. So I guess I would try to hire the best teachers we could get to teach our children what they should know about our state. I mean, there's so much that they don't teach in there. They don't teach the Constitution. They didn't teach about the Portsmouth Treaty. They didn't teach about Thanksgiving. So much stuff that they don't teach correctly in the schools that you just have to hire the right people to do that. Maybe we gotta get Fritz in there, I don't know.
Karen?
I can't. No, in reality, parents are the primary stakeholders of their children's education. It's not the Department of Education, it's not the federal dollars, it's you, the parents. You taught your children how to get dressed every morning, you taught them how to eat, you taught them how to speak their language. You've taught them everything. You have to be the primary advocate for your children's education. And so I'm an advocate that says that, you know, prior to 1919, when the Department of Education was established, and the superintendents were paid by the state, by the way, were established, and our cost of education was not 80 and 90% of your tax bill. It's time that we, the parents, took back over the schools, that we were responsible and had some say in who is hired and fired as teachers. And oh, by the way, that $9 million that Franklin's getting because of ESSER funds over the next 3 years, what do they want to do? They want to go hire more people. And our biggest problem in this country is that we have been lulled into the fact that people with letters behind their names know more than we do. And we have to start going back and doing a little bit more of the research ourselves, and we need to take the helm and accept our responsibility as parents to make sure that our children are learning what they're supposed to be learning. There's already an RSA in the state that mandates, it says you shall teach this subject of civics, history, constitutions, and you shall be tested, and you shall report it to the Department of Education. But the Department of Education commissioner calls me as a city councilor and says, where are the results? That's lame, and we, the people, need to start taking that back over. And the first place is to get rid of the federal dollars that are controlling everything that we're doing.
Where's Teresa? I can stay on track. All right, how you doing over there, hon? So we need to bring back a statewide civics exam, as Karen had just alluded to. You know, the education system is supposed to teach you how to be a functional adult. It's supposed to give you the minimum basic skills to be able to operate in society. Now, you don't have to be an expert in trigonometry or calculus or whatever to be marine biology to be a functional adult, but you do sure as hell need to understand how your government operates now to hold it accountable. There is no such thing as limited and accountable government. If you do not know your rights, you do not have them. Is that correct? That's what we always say, right? So we need to get back to, it's not just civics, it's also history. Because if you discuss civics without knowing the history of not just what happened, why they happened, who got paid, who got laid, but how everything transpired throughout history, how we got to the point that where we are. And you can do it by leaving out your opinions. When I went to school, I had a great history and civics teacher. His name was Daniel Joyce at Timberlake Regional High School in Plastow. And that man had me through sociology, anthropology, U.S. history, world history, Psych 101 and 102. He requested me all 4 years, and that man, I did not know what his political affiliation was. I didn't know whether he was married. I had no idea what his hobbies were outside of the classroom until after I graduated. That's what we need in the education system. Bring back teachers who operate on standards, actual standards of ethics, where you sit in the classroom, you discuss history, you discuss the government, how it's supposed to operate, how it really operates, and what we can do to take it back. If we give a national civics exam, or I'm sorry, a statewide civics exam, well, you know what? Maybe New Hampshire might end up being the smartest state in the country, and we'll be the only ones to fix our government. But hey, you know, I'd like to be the one leading the pack rather than the one following.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask all of you to give these candidates a big round of applause. Thank you, folks, for sitting in this room.
Can we give a round of applause to Dan Richard? What a my show is, how many of you think there's got to be a room at the table for each and every one of these individuals? So as we journey along, anyone who's watching, what do we do now? How do we actually take this back and execute? We have everything we need to pull this off. And don't you dare for a second doubt that. Right now, what we have numbers who are tracking and participating in the resolve, and to participate in the resolve is a verb. If each and every one of you diligently finds 10 people who are willing to go find 10 people who are willing to go find 10 people, between now and the primary and now in the general, we will blow the doors down. But don't you dare think for a moment that because we're doing well, the guy over there is going to be the one standing outside a market basket, or the lady over there is going to be the one to hit the parking lot. You need to hit a parking lot with those business cards every single week. You need to diligently find 10 people and say, I want you to get onto this group. I want you to understand this initiative. I can't yet speak to it, but come follow along and figure it out until you do, because this is the way New Hampshire is going to take it back. It doesn't take money. There is not a price tag on your freedom. It takes a little bit of effort. You all have a sphere of influence. And you might be in here and saying, I only have one friend, Trace. I don't have a sphere of influence. But you don't know that that one friend doesn't belong to a big motorcycle club, or doesn't belong to a big whatever it is, and someone there knows someone who knows you matter. Every single one of you matters right now more than ever before in history. We are so blessed to be in this particular point in time. Do not miss the opportunity that you have to play in history right now, right here in New Hampshire. I have people all the time saying, is this national? No, it's my backyard. Like literally, right? It's my garage. We need to set the example. We need to show that what our forefathers fought for, which was a civilian legislative body, that we assemble, that our strength in numbers makes it happen. We're going to talk about Article 10. Article 10 is our right to reform our government back to what its original state. So I hear a lot of people say this is such a mess, and it is. It is such a mess. We need to burn it all down. I have people who have their bug out bags and their pantries all stocked up, and they're figuring out how they're going to live off